Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I want to thank the Ryan Sinclair and his drummers from Ngoma Theater. I mean, Ngoma Thunder. I'm sorry. He's our drummer today. He's an actor, poet, playwright, and musician, and he's the founder of the Jacksonville-based Ngoma Thunder, which uses African drumming traditions to bring the human family together. So he is going to give us some drumming beats to keep the percussion going because if you're from the African diaspora, you got to have percussion. You got to have percussion. So he's going to be our percussion person for the event. My name is Lisa Brock. Why don't you say your name?
And I'm a John Moore Mary Dillahunt.
All right, and we are your MCs for today, and I just want to thank this crowd for coming out to the band book readout. As we know, we're gonna fight this thing. We're gonna fight it up, we're gonna fight it down, we're gonna fight it there, we're gonna fight it there. You cannot let fascism take a hold. So I'm so happy you all are all here. And on behalf of ASALH and the social justice team at ASALH, this is what we're doing here on behalf of ASALH, fighting wrong with right. So, a few announcements before we begin. As you all probably have already seen, on behalf of Tony Hill, we have wonderful band book tables. Everybody is welcome to take a book or two before you leave. We have volunteers there to help you pick out the book that you want. I would also like to mention that Dr. Diane Green is here giving out books. For those of you who don't know who she is, she's the former superintendent of schools for Duval County. And because of her positions and because of her fight for our kids, she is no longer in that position. She was forced out. She is now the president of the Children's Reading Initiative, and she is over there passing out banned books. We also finally got some water. It was delivered. There are small bottles of water on that table over there. So if you want a bottle of water, you can get one. We also have peacekeepers here providing some security for us. They're de-escalation folks. So they're around. They have white vests on and white hats, and they are moving around to make sure that we remain safe. There is a security guard from the park as well. I would definitely like to thank the park and Mr. Terrence Johnson and his staff that are working overtime, some of them to help us put this on. You got to really thank the folks who are doing this hard work. So, without any further ado, we are going to begin. Um, Amiri, I think you're first.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Okay.
So before I say anything else, I want to thank Dr. Lisa Brock for all the hard work and energy that she put in making sure this took place. So let's give it up for Dr. Brock. Now I have the honor of introducing the brother who's going to do our libation for today. Brother Rockman K. Johnson is a local television and radio personality and former Group 5 at-large representative for the Duval County Soil and Water Conservation District. Today, he is a major leader in the city and as a city council representative. Please join me in welcome City Councilman Rockman Johnson to do our libation.
Where your libation? My brother Rodney Hurst, my leader, said, "Where's my libation?" We got it coming. First of all, I am honored to be here, not just as a person who is a part of the diaspora, but as a person who is a leader in that building across the street where just a generation or two ago, we weren't even allowed to walk inside. It's a good feeling to be able to stand upon the shoulders of those like my brother Rodney Hurst and Sally Mathis and Mary Singleton and even our newest ancestor, Evelyn Denise Lee. And as we think about the work that they have done, it has allowed us to be here today. So I'm honored to pour libation as we not just remember those. Tomorrow I'll be doing a libation of at the necrology program as we remember our ancestors. But today, through this memory, And through this libation, it is a time of celebration. So for that, I use the libation that many of us know as we use to celebrate Kwanzaa. And it is an opportunity for you to join in as we celebrate our ancestors and family. Now, I'm going to read the libation statement, and you may look in the dictionary and see that libation is simply a pouring of liquid to the earth to remember those who have gone on, to bring their power down. So if you so feel like it, I want you to shout out and say, Ashe. You may say, Ashe. Now, I'm going to mix some languages. Ashe is a Yoruba word that means power or I agree. But the libation is going to be done in a tribute as we use Kiswahili or Swahili in this country to celebrate the time of Kwanzaa. At the end, there is a Swahili word I would like us to all say 7 times as we pull together with our fists, and that word is Harambe. Y'all say Harambe with me. You could do better than that, Jacksonville. Harambe. Okay, I know we got more than Jacksonville. It's ASALH. Come on, ASALH. Harambe. And the word Harambe simply means pull together. So we will say that 7 times and that gets started. But before I do anything, it is an African tradition that we ask the eldest for permission to speak. Now, I did learn a good lesson from my grandmother, never to ask any woman or person their age. So I'm going to let the elders speak for themselves. To our ancestors, ladies and gentlemen, may we speak? Thank you for the permission. Our fathers and mothers came here, lived, loved, struggled, and built here. At this place, their love and labor rose like the sun and gave strength to the meaning of the day. For them, then, who gave so much, we give in return. On the same soil, we will sow our seeds. We will sow our liberation. We will move to a higher level. We will find liberation and a vibration of human life. May our eyes be the eagle, our strength be the elephant, and the boldness of our life be like the lion. May we remember and honor our ancestors and the legacy they left for as long as the sun shines, for as long as the water flows. For our people everywhere, then we remember Shaka and Samare and Nzinga and all the others known and unknown who defended our ancestral land, history, and humanity from alien invaders. For Garvey, Muhammad, Malcolm, King, Harriet, Fannie Lou, Sojourner, Bethune, and Nat Turner, and all the others who dared to define, defend, and develop our interests as people. For our children and the fuller and freer lives that they have lived. For our struggles. For Kawaida, for the Nguzo Saba, a system of values to which gives identity and purpose and direction for our lives, for the new world we struggle to build, and for the continuing struggle through which we inevitably will rescue and reconstruct a history that is ours to love, to cherish, and to shape in our own image according to our own needs. These words we say as we pour libation, and I invite you to pour libation or say the name of your loved ones who are deceased as we pour libation. Say their name. Ashe. Say the name of your loved ones. Say their name. Ashe. Ida Ross Johnson. Ashe. Say the name of your loved ones. Say them. Ashe. Ashe. The beach lady. Ashe. Come on, you know some more names. He said, Rutledge Pearson, Ashe. Come on, say their names, Ashe. And to all the ones who are nameless, who we may not know, we say their names, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. And now I ask, hands in the air as you are pulling up, pull together 7 times. Harambe will count in Swahili. Here we go. Ja, ni, tu, Harambe, Harambe. Harambe, 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 hold it, Harambe! Welcome to ASALH. Thank you, Jacksonville. Ashe.
Thank you. Wow. We starting. Our next speaker is Reverend Reginald Gundy, who's a lifelong resident of Duval County. You all should know I'm from Chicago, actually. Watch out, watch out. I'm not packing, I'm not packing. I'm from Chicago, and most of us don't. But when we be watching the elections, we always say, this coming in from Duval County. The votes haven't been counted yet from Duval County, because we know when Duval County comes in, y'all are coming in. And now I've gotten to meet you and see you face to face. It's really, it's going to put a whole nother thing when I'm watching those national elections. So everybody continue to get out to vote. So Reverend Gundy is a lifelong resident of Duval County, and he has served as the pastor of Mount Sinai Missionary Baptist Church here in Jacksonville since 1999. He's a pastor who serves God by serving the people. Civically, he and his church members make sure that community members have education and information and access to voting. Since 2018, they have registered nearly 80,000 people to vote in Duval County alone. So please join me in welcoming Reverend Gundy, who will lead us in a prayer.
Let me begin this prayer by saying that our ancestors would probably say, a charge to keep I have, and a God to glorify. May we pray. Eternal God, our Father, we come now with a bowed head. We come with an humble heart. And we cannot merely come to you and pray to you, O God, to end a war. For we know that you have made the world in a way that people must find their own path to peace within themselves and with their neighbors. We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end starvation, for you have already given us the resources with which to feed the entire world, if we would only use them wisely. We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to root out prejudice, for you have already given us eyes with which to see the good in all people, if we would only use them rightly. We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end despair, for you've already given us the power to clear away slums and to give hope, if we would only use our power justly. We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end disease, for you have already given us great minds with which to search out cures and healing, if we would only use them constructively. Therefore, we pray to you instead, O God, for strength, for determination and power. For we realize, God, that we're living in a world right now, right here in Duval County, right here in the state of Florida, and even in America, where justice has not rolled down like a mighty stream. And therefore we come to you and ask you to look down upon us and touch us in such a way where we be willing to stand up and fight back for what we rightfully deserve. Asking you to stop by Tallahassee, touch the heart of that governor, and root out that evil that's running through his veins. And let him know that for God we stand and for God we'll die. We didn't come this far to turn around now. And so now, Father, in the name of thy Son Jesus, I'm asking you to look down upon us and let us be encouraged in you. Let us stand up and fight back. God, I thank you that you brought ASALH to Jacksonville. They didn't run away, they ran to the fight. And we need some fighters in this state. We need somebody to stand up and say, this is not right, and we're not going to take it anymore. But God, give us courage. Give us strength. Because they came into our own neighborhood and shot down our children and shot down our ancestors and shot down our loved ones. But God, right now, this ground that we stand on used to be a ground of hate, a ground of despair, a ground of mistreatment, a ground where they took axe handles and beat our ancestors in the head. But God, look at it now. It didn't come overnight. But I've learned that joy don't show up, but it will show up, if not tonight, tomorrow. We must have patience and understand. But God, these young people, to include myself, I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of not standing up. I'm tired of not fighting back. I'm tired of not just saying, God, I've had enough. But I'm waiting on you. But I need your encouragement. I'm waiting on you. I need your guidance. We waiting on you and ask you to show us what we should do. So now, as I get ready to close this prayer, I want you, please, God, to make DeSantis' bed uneasy. I'm asking you that when he lay down at night, that he wrestles with his conscience and realize that the way he's treating black folks and brown folks and indigenous folks is not what you require. You require justice. And he's not providing that justice that we need. I don't just want to pray for him, but I want to pray for God for that man who did the educational piece and made those decisions in the legislative body. God, make their bed uneasy. I'm not asking you to take them out. I'm just asking you to make their bed uneasy and let them know that we're not going to put up with this anymore. Let them know that we'll fight them day, noon, or night, but let them know that we'll get in the streets, we'll get in the state house, get in the city house, get in whatever house we need to get in and say we're not going to take it anymore. So therefore, have mercy upon this conference, have mercy upon this time together, for we love you, we need you, we adore you. And in the name of thy son Jesus now, I ask you to touch the speakers, ask you to touch those that are on program. And we'll be so careful, God, to always give you the praise, always give you the glory, always give you the honor. For it is in Jesus' name I pray and ask it all. And all of God's people will pray in their own faith and say, amen, amen, and amen.
I think I need to move to Jacksonville. Wow. Wow. If you weren't moved by that, you got a heart of stone, I tell you. Wow, that was lovely. Wonderful. Fight back. Our next speaker is Dr. Delaney, Marvin Delaney. He is the president of ASALH, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, which is holding this banned book readout. And he is going to come up here and he is going to say a few words, and then he's going to call up all of the Florida chapter presidents and leaders of ASALH. Let's give him a hand.
As I said, thank you, Jacksonville, for inviting ASALH to your city and hosting our conference. We came here to raise hell, and in fact, that's what we're going to do with this banned book readout. At this time, I'd like to bring forward the presidents of all the Florida branches. And I'm going to start with David Wilkins, who's president of Minnesota. Then I want to bring forward Jackie Hubbard, who's president of St. Pete. I want to bring forward Hazel Gillis, who's president of James Weldon Johnson. I'm going to bring forward Manuel Jones. Then I want to bring forward Charlotte Farmington, who's South Florida. Come on up. We're going to read a passage from Nicole Hannah Jones, the 1619. What? Tampa. Manuel, I called him. Yeah? Tampa, I'm sorry. Orlando, okay. Okay, as I said, we're going to read a passage from Nicole Hannah Jones, the 1619 Project. You may know that some of the states, particularly in the South, have banned this book. They've banned it as a aid to curriculum. So we want to read this passage, which really illustrates why they banned it. My favorite subjects in school were English and social studies, and I peppered my teachers with questions. History revealed the building blocks of the world are now inhabited, explaining how communities, institutions, relationships came to be. Learning history made the world make sense. It provided the key to know all that I saw around me. Black people, however, were largely absent from the histories I read. The vision of the past I absorbed from school textbooks, television, and the local history museum depicted a world, perhaps a wishful one, where black people did not really exist. The history rendered black Americans, black people on all the earth, inconsequential at best, invisible at worst. We appeared only where unavoidable. Slavery was mentioned briefly in the chapter on the nation's most deadly war, and then black people disappeared again for a full century until magically reappearing as Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech about a dream. This quantum leap served black experience up in a few paragraphs and a tiny bow, never really explaining why 100 years after the abolition of slavery, King had to lead the March on Washington in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Y'all did good. Y'all read well.
But thank you to the ASALH president and the president of local chapters here in Florida. We appreciate you, and we're following your leadership. Now, we were going to have Representative Angie Nixon join us, but in this time of crisis that our people are facing, sometimes the work requires us to be in places that we did not expect to be, but need to be. And so she will unfortunately not be able to join us today. So next up, we have Brother Charlie Cobb Jr., who is a person that I admire, who I've known for quite some time and had the chance to learn from and work with while an undergrad at North Carolina Central University and an intern with the SNCC Digital Gateway Project. So for those who don't know, and for those who should know, Brother Charlie Cobb is a journalist, professor, and a former field secretary for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. As an award-winning journalist, Charlie is a member of the National Association of Black Journalists Hall of Fame and is a 2018 Distinguished Carnegie Fellowship Award winner. He's currently a force in the SNCC Legacy Project. Now, Brother Charlie, please join.
Thank you, John Moo. He didn't mention I was also with him on his 21st birthday. I'm better with a keyboard and a screen than I am with a microphone, so I won't be up here a long time. I want to say a couple of things and read a couple of passages from James Baldwin's "The Fire Next Time," banned here in Florida public schools. And I actually didn't encounter Baldwin until 1963, walking across the campus of Howard University, involved with a SNCC conference there, and he was the invited speaker. I found he put so many ideas on the table that I ought to buy his books so that I could read what he had to say and think more carefully. Baldwin, although he's identified as a firebrand and whatnot, really was a man who always inspired ideas and thinking. And that's the reason we need him in our schools. I'm going to read some passages from The Fire Next Time, his 1963 book. It's full of ideas, although it's only 102 pages long. Uh, I I thought long and hard about what from Baldwin to read because there's so much he offers. I want to talk and read about him being invited to dinner by Elijah Muhammad of the Nation of Islam and use that as a reason why we need to have books like this in school. First, Baldwin says, and I use it by way of introducing his meeting with Muhammad, most Negroes cannot risk assuming that the humanity of white people is more real to them than their color. And this leads imperceptibly, but inevitably, to a state of mind in which, having long ago learned to expect the worst from the worst one finds, it is very easy to believe the worst. The brutality with which Negroes are treated in this country simply cannot be overstated. Now, Baldwin in Chicago has been invited to dinner by Elijah Muhammad of the Nation of Islam. And as he's walking down the street, he's sort of worrying. He's never met the man, and he can't believe that the man would invite him because he can't believe Elijah Muhammad would agree with anything he has to say. And he's trying to figure out how he's going to interact with this leader of the Nation of Islam. And he's trying to decide what to say. Excuse me. Excuse me. Here we go. He engages in an exchange with Baldwin and finally blurts out, I told Elijah that I did not care if white and black people married, and that I had many white friends. I would have no choice if it came to him but to perish with them. For, I said to myself, not to Elijah, I love a few people, and they love me, and some of them are white. And isn't love more important than color? He says, Elijah told him, I remained unready. Elijah told me I remained unready, and I would just have to find the truth for myself. I decided one cannot argue with anyone's experience or decision or belief. And as for me, I could only cite exceptions to what Elijah had to say. He concludes his discussion of this exchange by saying, if we, and now I mean the relatively conscious whites and the relatively conscious blacks, who must, like lovers, insist on or must create the consciousness of the others, do not falter in our duty, now we may be able to end the racial nightmare and achieve the kind of change the history of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. You know, words increase and deepen our imagination, make us think. That's what books do. They make us dream. They make us envision. They help us declare where we want to be in the world. if books are banned and there's only one or two views, how are we all supposed to find ourselves? So thank you, Charlie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So our next speaker and artist is 12-year-old Sienna Chappelle Bilbro, who is a seventh grader at La Villa School of the Arts. Isn't that cool? And she plays the violin. So what she is going to do for us is that she is going to play a song for us. She can announce what that is, and then she's going to read a small passage from a book that she chose. Okay, Sienna.
The song that I will be playing today is Lift Every Voice and Sing. Thank you.
She's got to put that precious violin away before she reads. I want to give a shout out to the executive director of ASALH, Sylvia Cyrus, who is like the organizer extraordinaire of the ASALH conferences and everything ASALH. I'd like to also give a shout out to Aisha Hakel, who's a VP for ASALH. She's the VP for programs and Sylvia's executive director. I'd also like to give a shout out to our social justice at ASALH team. I see Michelle Pouchot over there, who's our project director. I see Nick Hall here, who's our media person. Do I see Christina Crawford right there? And Julia Bradley is at one of the tables back there. So that's the social justice team at ASALH. So, are you ready? All right, Sienna's ready.
Today I'm going to be reading a page from Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. What everybody knows now. Even though the laws have changed, my grandmother still takes us to the back of the bus when we go downtown in the rain. It's easier, my grandmother says, than having white folks look at me like I'm dirt. But we aren't dirt. We are people, paying the same fare as other people. When I say this to my grandmother, she nods and says, easier to stay where you belong. I look around and see the ones who walk straight to the back, see the ones who take up a seat up front, daring anyone to make them move. And know this is who I want to be. Not scared like that, brave like that. Thank you.
Now let's give it up for the seventh grader who played that beautiful version of Lift Every Voice and Sing and read a passage of a banned book. Next up, we have a person who not only teaches people's history, but will fight for the people. And that's Dr. Paul Ortiz, who is a professor of history at the University of Florida. He is the author of Emancipation Betrayed, the Hidden History of Black Organizing and White Violence in Florida from Reconstruction to the Bloody Election of 1920, and the author of An African American and Latinx History of the United States. And some may not know, but beginning in the fall semester of 2024, he's beginning an appointment as Professor of Labor History at Cornell University. So, Dr. Ortiz.
Thank you, Brother Jamu. And I also bring greetings from my union, the United Faculty of Florida. We have not one, but 2 lawsuits against Governor Ron DeSantis. I want to read this evening a very personal excerpt, personal for me and my family. I'm a 3rd generation U.S. military combat veteran. And when I was growing up in Bremerton, Washington, we were not allowed to read Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five or The Children's Crusade, A Duty Dance with Death, because it was an anti-war book, because it gave the Mexican-American community that I grew up with an alternative to going to war. War was all I knew growing up. So this is very personal for me, so if I tear up, please bear with me. The scene is in 1964, Kurt Vonnegut, along with his young daughter and her friend, arrive at the home of his fellow World War II combat veteran, Bernard O'Hare. Both had been prisoners of war in Dresden, Germany during the Allied firebombing. And the sun went down, and we had supper in an Italian place, and then I knocked on the front door, the beautiful stone house of Bernard V. O'Hare. I was carrying a bottle of Irish whiskey like a dinner bell. I met his nice wife, Mary, to whom I dedicate this book. Mary admired the 2 little girls I brought, mixed them in with her own children, sent them all upstairs to play games and watch television. It was only after the children were gone that I sensed that Mary didn't like me or didn't like something about the night. She was polite but chilly. "It's a nice, cozy house you have here," I said, and it really was. "I fixed up a place where you can talk and not be bothered," she said. "Good," I said, and I imagined 2 leather chairs near a fire in a paneled room where 2 old soldiers could drink and talk. But she took us into the kitchen. She had put 2 straight back chairs at a kitchen table with a white porcelain top. That tabletop was screaming with reflected light from a 200-watt bulb overhead. Mary had prepared an operating room. She put only 1 glass on it, which was for me. She explained that her husband couldn't drink the hard stuff since the war. So we sat down. O'Hare was embarrassed, but he wouldn't tell me what was wrong. I couldn't imagine what it was about me that could burn up Mary so. I was a family man. I've been married only once. I wasn't a drunk. I hadn't done her husband any dirt in the war. She fixed herself a Coca-Cola, made a lot of noise banging the ice cube tray in the stainless steel sink. Then she went into another part of the house, but she wouldn't sit still. She was moving all over the house, opening and shutting doors, even moving furniture around to work off anger. I asked O'Hare what I'd said or done to make her act that way. "It's all right," he said. "Don't worry about it. It doesn't have anything to do with you." That was kind of him. He was lying. It had everything to do with me. So we tried to ignore Mary and remember the war. I took a couple belts of the booze I brought. We would chuckle or grin sometimes as though war stories were coming back, but neither one of us could remember anything good. O'Hare remembered one guy who got into a lot of wine in Dresden, Germany before it was firebombed, and we had to take him home in a wheelbarrow. It wasn't much to write a book about. I remember 2 Russian soldiers who had looted a clock factory. They had a horse-drawn wagon full of clocks. They were happy and drunk. They were smoking huge cigarettes they had rolled up in a newspaper. That was about it for the memories, and Mary was still making noise. She finally came out in the kitchen again for another Coke. She took another tray of ice cubes from the refrigerator, banged it in the sink, even though there was already plenty of ice out. Then she turned to me, let me see how angry she was, and that anger was for me. She had been talking to herself, so what she said was a fragment of a much larger conversation. "You were just babies then." "What?" I said. "You were just babies in the war, like the ones upstairs." I nodded that this was true. We had been foolish virgins in the war right at the end of childhood. "But you're not going to write it that way, are you?" This wasn't a question, it was an accusation. I don't know," I said. "Well, I know," she said. "You'll pretend you were men instead of babies, and you'll be played in the movies by Frank Sinatra and John Wayne, or some of those other glamorous, war-loving, dirty old men. And war will look just wonderful, so we'll have a lot more of them. And they'll be fought by babies like the ones upstairs." So then I understood. It was war that made her so angry. She didn't want her babies or anybody else's babies killed in wars. And she thought wars were partly encouraged by books and movies. So I held up my right hand and I made her a promise. "Mary," I said, "I don't think this book of mine is ever going to be finished. I must have written 5,000 pages by now and thrown them all away. If I ever do finish it, though, I give you my word of honor. There won't be a part for Frank Sinatra or John Wayne. I'll tell you what," I said, "I'll call it the Children's Crusade." She was my friend after that. Thank you.
Paul's statement reminds me of going to an outlet mall just outside of Chicago, which is near a naval base off of Lake Michigan. And I saw, I guess, a day off for the young soldiers. And I remember feeling exactly that way. It had to be 500 young men and women in naval outfits in that mall that day. And I literally teared up because they had pimples, they were young, they were babies. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So thank you for that. Our next speaker is Diamond B. Wallace. She is the chapter leader of the Dream Defenders of Jacksonville. Woo! And the vice president of Jewels of the Future. Diamond is an activist, youth organizer, and community leader. She is known most for her win and efforts of the Change the Name initiative of schools named after Confederate leaders in Jacksonville.
Hey, everybody. So, I'm going to start with my excerpt from Zoro Neale Hurston. Their eyes were watching God. Ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. For some, they come in with the tide. For others, they sail forever on the horizon, never out of sight, never landing until the watcher turns his eye away in resignation, his dreams mocked to death by time. That is the life of man. Now, women forget all of those things they don't want to remember, and remember everything they don't want to forget. The dream is the truth, then they act and do things accordingly. Isn't that statement ironic? We now dream of our truth being told, and their dream of their truth is being told in order to pain us and to make it seem like we need to sit down or be taught and told what to do. And when I say them, I want to be specific because I don't believe in he say, she say, y'all. So, number one, beginning with Governor DeSantis, his constituency, and anybody else in the public school system that believes teaching our students and making them blind, engulfed in flames of lies that allow them to see, I'm sorry. Start over, y'all. So, let me get it together. I'm a little nervous. All right, let me start over. How ironic is that statement? We now dream of our truth being told, and their dream of the truth and the perfect story to get them being told, and they act and do things accordingly to pain us. And when I say them, I want to be specific because I don't believe in he say, she say. Governor DeSantis, his like-minded constituents, and any member of the public school system that believes children will be better off blind and engulfed in flame of lies than allowing them to see the beauty in their struggle and overcoming well-known stereotypes they are going to have to come across no matter how far their Black excellence takes them. We are at a battle between the truth versus lies and our kids. And I, like many others, felt like this fight was black and white. It is not, because they use gray, blurred areas to create unjust, untrue, and immoral standards to legally teach our kids their ancestors' slavery was a gift. Can I hear a shame? So what do we need to do? The common question, that's the burning question. We need to, number 3, start creating coalitions with nonprofits and organizations in your city. Number 2, stop competing for the same money with the same issues. And number 1, create a sense of community again. Know your neighborhood. Be sweet to their families. Watch out for them. We act like we haven't known the problem for years, and that is community love. If you don't have that, you will forget empathy, trust, and sympathy. And if you have those, we will never progress. We will never create peace for our families and our kids, and the banned books will only be an addition to the torment on us and our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diamond. I'm of the belief that if there's somebody from the Dream Defenders in the building, we're in good hands. Next up, I would like to introduce Kelly Frazier, who is the current president of the Northside Coalition of Jacksonville. And Ms. Frazier is also a graduate of FAMU that was just ranked the #1 HBCU, where she received her Bachelor's of Arts degree in political science with a concentration in pre-law. Ms. Frazier.
Good evening. The poem that I'll read to you tonight is The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. She recited this poem at the inauguration of Biden back in 2020. And while this book can still be found in some middle schools, there was one school where there was one empowered, slightly misguided parent that challenged its appropriateness. This parent claimed that the poem was not educational and that it contained indirect messages of hate and could cause confusion and indoctrinate students. Well, fortunately, a review at the school determined otherwise, but the book was then restricted. That's still bad. This means that you now had to know that the book was at the school ask for the book because it wasn't on the shelves, then prove that you're a particular age to get access to the book. Amanda Gordon herself, when she found out that the book was restricted, stated, and I quote, "There's a huge loophole that exists where we expect if a book isn't burned behind the school or thrown away, it's not a ban. I think we're going to have to broaden our understanding of the restriction and removal that's going on." End quote. I agree with her, and I'm sure a lot of you would as well. While it's a good thing that this book is still available, it's actually a great thing that the book is still available. There is a thick fog of intolerance, fear, privilege, and white fragility that's looming over our state, trying to cloud our vision of accurate American history. Governor DeSantis claims that he had nothing to do with the challenging of this book. Yet he was the one that signed the law that allowed the parent to complain about any specific books in school. He's the one that empowered this parent to raise her misguided voice and invited her to march to his racist drumbeat to campaign against in Florida, to make it the place where woke goes to die. That parent thought she could kill woke. DeSantis thought he could kill woke. And all those that agree with that parent and DeSantis will also fail. Why? Because of people like us. We will not be the people who in the face of evil do nothing. We will fight for truth. We will fight for justice. And where will we fight? But on every hill we climb. This is a shortened version of The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We brave the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried. That we'll forever be tied, victorious. That is the promise to glade the hill we climb if only we dare. It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than to share it. And this truth and this faith we trust. For while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. A country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Become the future. But one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states, and we will rise from the sun-baked South. When day comes, we step out of the shade aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it. Thank you.
Boy, I'm moved. I'm so moved. We've got 3 more speakers, and then we're going to close out. The next one is by audio message, and it is by Dr. Angela Yvonne Davis. Angela sent us an audio message for this event. I'm so happy she found the time to do it. As we know, Angela is a justice warrior of unparalleled reputation. After being falsely charged with a crime she did not commit, she emerged victorious to continue to lead, write, and speak beautiful truth to power. She is a feminist, a prison abolitionist, founder of the History of Consciousness program at the University of California, author of many books, and is currently fighting with young activists against Cop City in Atlanta. If you don't know about Cop City, look it up. It's very dangerous.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, okay. So she has an audio message and will be talking about and reading from Toni Morrison, who was a good friend of hers.
Thank you for inviting me to participate in this important program that highlights the need to resist the dangerous trend of banned books. The institutions that engage in this book banning practice range from prisons and schools to boards of education and informal parent groups. My name is Angela Davis, and I will be reading from a novel written by Toni Morrison, whose books have been featured on too many banned books lists to name. But Toni was very proud of the letter she received from the head of the Texas Department of Prisons indicating that they had banned her novel Paradise from all Texas prisons. She kept the letter posted in her guest bathroom so that if you were visiting her, you were compelled to read the letter as you washed your hands, since in lieu of a mirror, it was posted directly above the sink. The letter indicated that Paradise was banned because it might cause a riot. How powerful is that, she commented in an interview. I could tear up the whole place. But seriously, banning books is an undisguised attempt to control how people think, how they imagine, how they create universes of thought. Banning books is about mind control, but it is also about barring readers from experiencing that beauty that is created by words, even when those words evoke ugly worlds, leading us to wonder what needs to be done in order to shift and transform the worlds so that they better complement the beauty of the words that evoke them. Paradise begins. They shoot the white girl first. With the rest, they can take their time. No need to hurry out here. They are 17 miles from a town which has 90 miles between it and any other. Hiding places will be plentiful in the convent. But there is time, and the day has just begun. They are 9. Over twice the number of women they are obliged to stampede or kill. And they have the paraphernalia for either requirement: rope, a palm leaf cross, handcuffs, mace, and sunglasses, along with clean, handsome guns. They have never been this deep in the convent. Some of them have parked Chevrolets near its porch to pick up a string of peppers, or have gone into the kitchen for a gallon of barbecue sauce. But only a few have seen the halls, the chapel, the schoolroom, the bedrooms. Now they all will. And at last they will see the cellar and expose its filth to the light that is soon to scour the Oklahoma sky. Meanwhile, they are startled by the clothes they are wearing, suddenly aware of being ill dressed. For at the dawn of a July day, how could they have guessed the cold that is inside this place? Their t-shirts, work shirts, and dashikis soak up coal like fever. Those who have worn shoes are unnerved by the thunder of their steps on marble floors. Those in brocades by the silence. Then there is the grandeur. Only the two who are wearing ties seem to belong here. And one by one, each is reminded that before it was a convent, this house was an embezzler's folly, a mansion where bisque and rose-toned marble floors segue into teak ones. Isinglass holds yesterday's light and patterns walls that was stripped and whitewashed 50 years ago. The ornate bathroom fixtures, which sicken the nuns, were replaced with good plain spigots. But the princely tubs and sinks, which could not be inexpensively removed, remain coolly corrupt. The embezzler's joy that could be demolished was particularly in the dining room, which the nuns converted to a schoolroom, where still Arapaho girls once sat and learned to forget.
There it is. Next up, we have Mr. Rodney Hurst, who is a father, a grandfather, a great grandfather, a cancer survivor, a civil rights activist, a black historian, a military veteran, and author of 4 books, of which 3 are national award winners. Mr. Hurst will read from his first book, It Was Never About a Hot Dog and a Coke, and his recent book that was just published in July of 2023 for 12 and 18-year-olds entitled Black and Brilliant. Mr. Hurst.
Good evening. For those of you who are visitors to Jacksonville, on behalf of those of us who are natives, let me invite you to Jacksonville. I refer to Jacksonville as a city where you cannot use progressive and Jacksonville in the same sentence. And maybe we'll get better one day. You are standing and sitting in a very historic place. 63 years ago, young black students, led by a dynamic 16-year-old president of a youth council, NAACP, led sit-in demonstrations at where the federal courthouse is behind you, where City Hall is to the right or left of you, because all of these stores wanted us to spend our money, but only where they wanted us to spend our money. Before I go any further, let me introduce to you my granddaughter, who's on one camera, and my grandson, who's on another camera.
I've got a few short minutes and I've got a lot to cram in the 5 minutes that Dr. Brock told me I had. So if I go over a minute or two, you'll understand that the reason for banning books is that white folk don't want to feel guilty and uncomfortable to what white folk have done to black folk when they should feel guilty and uncomfortable. So let me read a passage from my first book, which was not, and the sit-in demonstrations were not covered by the press. They blacked out all of the sit-ins after we had sat in for 2 weeks. We were attacked by 200 whites with axe handles and baseball bats in and around this same area where you are. And I'm talking about what happens when you go into a Woolworth's. When you entered Woolworth's from Hogan Street, the street right behind you, and look to the left, you could see a lunch counter spanning the entire Monroe Street side of the store. 84 lunch counter seats were punctuated by spacious customer serving bays and bright windows. You can stop and eat at Woolworth's convenient lunch counters after spending time shopping in Woolworth's or after shopping downtown. You could, that is, if you were white. For blacks, an invisible sign said lunch counters for whites only. If black shoppers wanted to eat in Woolworth's after shopping, the process worked differently. Woolworth wanted you to spend your money, but only where they wanted you to spend your money. Into Woolworth's again, the white lunch counters on the left. If you started walking to the rear of the store, you would walk past the cosmetics counter. Then you would walk past the costume jewelry counter. Then you would walk past the popcorn counter. Then you would walk past the candy counter. You would then walk past the women's clothes counter. Then you would walk past the men clothes counter. You would walk past the children clothes counter. You would walk past the white and colored water fountains. You would walk past the work shoe counter. You would walk past the dress shoes counter. You would walk past the bedroom shoes counter. You would walk past the picture frames and mirrors counter. Then you would walk past the aquarium supplies counter. Then you would walk past the stairs leading upstairs to the restrooms marked white women, white men, colored women, colored men. Then you would walk past the pet food and the pet supplies counter. Then you would walk past the house plants. Then you would walk past the gardening supplies counter. And then, and only then, would you see the colored lunch counter. 15 seats. No windows. Nothing punctuated. We set in because we fought racism and for black human dignity and respect. We fought racism, and racism makes white folk feel guilty and uncomfortable. My second book is entitled Black and Brilliant. Let me read a couple of passages from that before Dr. Brock tells me to sit down. Black parents who have experienced racism worry about having that conversation about racism and discrimination with their kids at too early an age. Others shy away from discussing it at all if they believe they might not fully understand it or if they do not feel comfortable discussing it. Yet other parents, especially those whose children have experienced racism, do not have such choices. Racism is devastating. Yet many do not realize how devastating it is. You experience racism every day. You see examples daily of racism in American society, in the media, on the news, and on social media, because we talk about our cruel treatment since Americans and Europeans kidnapped us from Africa and brought us to these shores in 1619. Whites blame us for being divisive, causing division and hatred, and making them feel guilty, uncomfortable, and responsible for their racism toward us. That makes many white folk feel guilty and uncomfortable. And until we understand guilty and uncomfortable, there is nothing we can do with communicating with each other, because until we discuss those uncomfortable subjects, we are being dishonest with each other. Forget about telling the truth. What we're doing then is comfort speak. White folk and black folk today only have those conversations that make them feel comfortable. In my second book, I talked about black history, and one of the persons that I talked about was Dr. Johnetta Betch Cole. Dr. Cole at the time was the director of the African Art Museum of the Smithsonian. And as I would interview different subjects, I would tape their conversation, and then I would summarize it for the book. And then after I finished talking with Dr. Cole and I completed all of the taping, I said, I am not going to summarize anything Dr. Johnetta Betch Cole says. I am writing the whole thing that she says, because I certainly cannot come up with better words. So let me do this in introducing. Let me read to you the words I wrote in ending the chapter of Dr. Johnetta Betch Cole. Dr. Cole is not only the voice of wisdom, she is also a voice of education, a voice of knowledge, a voice of leadership. It's quite easy to see why Dr. Johnetta Betch Cole is a black pioneer and a black shero, with a voice that has had an impact on this country and an intelligence that has played a role in the international scene. Her life is a testament and a testimony to the hymn, "May the works I've done speak for me." Her works shout volumes. Her works shout to the highest rooftops. Her prodigious works shout to every mountaintop you can name, to the Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, to the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, to the curvaceous slopes of California, to Georgia's Stone Mountain, to Tennessee's Lookout Mountain, and to every hill and molehill of Mississippi, and to every mountainside that Dr. King talked about in his I Have a Dream speech on the National Mall in 1963. Dr. Johnetta Betch Cole is what the civil rights movement was all about: to give our greatest and our best an opportunity to lead this country. In spite of the dark hue of her skin, she took her opportunity to walk through the door many years ago. And in the process to walk through the door many years ago, she positively impacted our young people, our future brain trust. She continues to give her very best, and for that, we are all eternally grateful. Dr. Johnetta Betch Cole.
My sisters, my brothers, my siblings, all good evening. If Dr. Maya Angelou might say, were she with us, this is an evening that you have never seen before. And it is an evening that you will never see again. Having been so honored and blessed to know my sister friend, and yes, Shiro, Dr. Maya, I think that in making that statement, there was another that she decided not to make, because we ought to have enough sense to figure it out. And that is, what are you going to do with this evening? I think each of us should feel a great sense of joy and pride that this evening we responded to the call of ASALH to come to this park and to say, you can try to ban books of our history and her story, but that is a battle you will not win. I am so full of gratitude and joy that we are here to read banned books. As many of you know, the person who's about to read from a banned book was born and raised in this town of Jacksonville, Florida. I was raised on the west side of town on Louisiana Street. Before, in fact, we got to move to Sugar Hill. I'm the daughter of Mary Frances Lewis Betch and John Thomas Betch Sr. And I cannot tell you what joy, what pride I have in saying that while my older sister, the beach lady, is up there in glory somewhere, in this park, somewhere, is my baby brother, John Thomas Betch Jr. We are, the three of us, the great grandchildren of Abraham Lincoln Lewis, who many of you know was born up the road in Madison County, of formerly enslaved Judy and Robert Lewis. And though he only managed to have an elementary school education, A.L. Lewis believed in education, as the old folk around here used to say, like the devil believes in sin. And so he supported education. He supported businesses in the interest of black people. And the day came, as you may know, when with 6 other black men, they founded the Afro-American Life Insurance Company. Not the first black insurance company, but the first insurance company in the state of Florida. And so I share this little bit of genealogy with you. Well, in part because I'm an anthropologist now, y'all. You know, I like kinship charts. But because there is a unrighteous, evil movement that says we should not know who our ancestors are, where they came from, and what they did in the struggle that we now have the privilege to continue. I am particularly fortunate to know that I am the great-granddaughter of A.L. Lewis and Mary Frances Sammis Lewis. And that Mary Frances Sammis Lewis was the great-granddaughter of a 13-year-old Senegalese girl, Anta Majidinjai, captured, shackled, brought from her village where she was of royal lineage, put on the island of Gorée off of the coast of Senegal, and pushed through that door of no return. Off-boarded in Havana, Cuba, where a British enslaver by the name of Zephaniah Kingsley had traveled for the explicit purpose, listen to this language, of buying human beings. He impregnated her, my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, before they reached the Kingsley plantation, which some of you will visit before you bring closure on this experience. It is stories like that, as my brother Rodney has said, that the governor of Florida says will make him uncomfortable. And we should not tell that story. Well, we're going to tell that story. And I know my siblings, you too have a story that you must tell. As I bring not closure, but a point of pause in this evening's reading from banned books, I want you to know that I have chosen from a very special publication of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. First banned many years ago, and now, of course, a favorite of those in Florida and Texas and Arizona and the rest of these states that have the audacity to think that they can keep us from learning. Well, ban the books. We will read them as soon as possible. I am going to read, in fact, from a very special edition of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Beautifully crafted book with an introduction by my Spelman sister, Tayari Jones, who many of you will know as the author of An American Marriage. The book is illustrated by Shabazz Larkin, published in London by the Folio Society in 2020. In just a second, you will know why I chose this passage when I could have chosen almost any. I looked up and saw Henry Reed, the conservative, the proper, the A student, turn his back to the audience and turn to us, the proud graduating class of 1940, and sing, nearly speaking. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. It was the poem written by James Weldon Johnson. It was the music composed by J. Rosamond Johnson. It was the Negro national anthem. Out of habit, we were singing it. Our mothers and fathers stood in the dark hall and joined the hymn of encouragement. A kindergarten teacher led the small children onto the stage, and the buttercups and daisies and bunny rabbits marked time and tried to follow. Stormy the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. Every child I knew had learned that song with his ABCs. And along with Jesus loves me, this I know. But I personally had never heard it before. Never heard the words, despite the thousands of times I had sung them. Never thought they had anything to do with me. On the other hand, the words of Patrick Henry had made such an impression on me that I had been able to stretch myself tall and trembling and say, I know what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or death. And now I heard, really heard for the first time, we have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. While echoes of the song shivered in the air, Henry Reed bowed his head and said, thank you, and returned to his place in the line. The tears that slipped down many faces were not wiped away in shame. We were on top again, As always, again, we survived. The depths had been icy and dark, but now a bright sun spoke to our souls. I was no longer simply a member of the proud graduating class of 1940. I was a proud member of the wonderful, beautiful Negro race.
Yes. Wow. Yes.
Let's clap. Woo! We got our marching orders. We're going to keep up the fight. We're going to keep reading books. We're going to unban those books for our people and all people. I want to thank everybody for coming. And it was fitting to end with the whole sister, Dr. Janetta Cole, former president of Spelman, former president of Bennett. I mean, whoa. There's water over there. Take some banned books. Thank you for coming.